Pat Specer in the lane. Pat Specer to float it up and out and in. It went around the iron and fell. Santos on the step around on Hunter. Back out to Specer. Dropped in the three.
That's big time.
Kick it back out. Did he give him the money sign?
Every NBA career starts with a dream, but Pat Spencer's dream didn't even begin on a basketball court. Before he ever dribbled in a college game, he was becoming a legend, rewriting record books in a completely different sport. A lacrosse GOAT, a generational athlete, someone who was supposed to spend the rest of his life dominating on a lacrosse field. And then he walked away from all the awards, from the legacy, from being the best at something almost nobody else could touch, to chase a sport he hadn't truly played since high school. A sport where the odds of making the NBA are already microscopic, even if you're a lifelong gym rat. But somehow, he made it. And here's the crazy part. There's a key moment in this story, a moment almost no one talks about, and that explains how Pat Specer pulled off one of the most unlikely transitions in modern sports. A moment that reveals why a lacrosse superstar became an NBA underdog hero, and why his journey is even stranger than it looks on the surface. This is the unbelievable rise of Pat Specer.
Pat Specer open three again. Cash one more time.
Pat Spencer's story doesn't begin with stardom. It begins with getting overlooked and cut more than once. In Davidsonville, Maryland, inside a home built on competition, Pat Specer wasn't the chosen one. He wasn't the prodigy. He wasn't the kid coaches circled first on tryout sheets. He was the kid who kept hearing the same phrase, too small. As a freshman and sophomore, Pat stood barely 5'4", then 5'6", undersized and underdeveloped, and the world treated him accordingly. He was cut from the varsity lacrosse team. He was cut from the varsity basketball team. And when he tried out for the elite club program, the Baltimore Crabs, they cut him too. Every door he wanted to walk through closed in his face. But here's the part most people miss. That rejection didn't break him. It built him. Instead of warming the end of a varsity bench, Pat was sent to junior varsity, where boys' Latin coaches made a decision that changed everything. They handed him the ball, let him run the offense, let him make mistakes, create, experiment, and develop confidence that most kids never get at that age. They didn't see a small player. They saw a late bloomer, someone whose ceiling was still miles above his current reality. Pat attacked that year the only way he knew how, relentlessly. With every rep, every JV possession, every moment with the ball in his stick, he grew, not just physically, but mentally. He developed the vision of a point guard, the creativity of a playmaker, the toughness of someone who had to fight to prove he belonged. And then his body caught up. The growth spurt came, just like it had for his father years earlier. Suddenly, Pat wasn't 5'6" anymore. He was 6'3", 190 pounds, and built like the kind of lacrosse attackman big-time programs dream about. But the size wasn't what changed him. The adversity did. Being cut taught him patience. Being overlooked taught him resilience. Being doubted taught him how to respond. So when Loyola, one of the best lacrosse programs in the country, needed a late-blooming recruit, they left a spot open for him, the kid nobody fought over. And he rewarded them immediately. As a freshman at Loyola, Pat didn't just contribute, he took over. Quarterback of the offense, two-handed passer, endless vision, point guard instincts applied to a lacrosse field. He became the kind of player coaches fear to recruit against. The one they missed, the one who slipped through the cracks, the one who didn't stop growing, physically, mentally, or competitively. And that's the bridge to the next chapter of his life. The one almost no one saw coming, because those same qualities that turned him into a lacrosse star, the delayed growth, the overlooked talent, the constant cuts and clawing his way back, those were the exact traits he would need when he walked away from the sport where he became a legend and took another shot at the dream he had as a kid in that driveway. Basketball. The toughness from lacrosse. The vision developed at boys' Latin. The resilience forged in being too small. The creativity sharpened in every sport he played. All of it would become the foundation of one of the most improbable basketball stories of this generation. A lacrosse superstar fighting to earn a place in the basketball world that once rejected him. And just like before, Pat Specer wasn't supposed to make it, which is exactly why he did. When Pat Specer arrived at Loyola University, He wasn't a headline signing. He wasn't a prized recruit. He wasn't the kind of kid big programs circled on their recruiting boards. He was a late addition, a quiet gamble reserved for someone who might, just might, turn into something special. And that alone says everything about where he came from. Because Pat Specer was all too familiar with defying the odds. Long before anyone called him a lacrosse legend, he was a high school sophomore getting cut from the varsity lacrosse team. Another setback in a growing list of moments where coaches told him what he wasn't. Too small, too raw, too late to matter. But the labels didn't crush him. They sharpened him. And the moment he stepped onto the field at Loyola, it became clear that the kid who once couldn't make varsity had turned into something entirely different. From day one, Pat wasn't intimidated, not by the speed, not by the physicality, not by the expectations placed on a freshman stepping into a top 10 program. He read the field like a quarterback. He anticipated movements seconds before they unfolded. He threaded impossible passes through invisible windows. It was the vision he'd built on JV courts and backyard hoops, now weaponized on a lacrosse field. He wasn't just contributing, he was controlling. Year after year, the numbers grew, the highlights grew, the whispers grew. Sophomore year, he was a problem. Junior year, he was a threat. Senior year, he was unstoppable. By the end of his Loyola career, the resume didn't look real. He became the NCAA Division I all-time assists leader with 231, a record he still holds. A 4-time All-American, a Tewaaraton Award winner, the lacrosse equivalent of the Heisman Trophy, a first overall pick in the inaugural PLL draft, and the engine of one of the most dangerous offenses in the country. Coaches called him a nightmare to guard. Commentators didn't simply praise him, they marveled at him.
Diving is a great move because it's almost impossible to stop in a one-on-one matchup.
Because Pat Specer didn't play lacrosse the way others did. He played it like someone who had to fight for every inch of respect he ever earned. He played it like someone built by rejection, not validation. Loyola wasn't just where he blossomed, it's where he became a legend. Where a kid once cut from varsity became the best player in college lacrosse. Where an overlooked recruit became a generational superstar. Where a late bloomer became an unsolvable problem for every defender who tried to stop him. He had the size now. He had the skill now. He had the dominance the world once said he'd never reach. And standing at the peak of a lacrosse career, already destined for greatness, he did something no one saw coming. He walked away. From the sport where he'd become a legend. From records that may never be touched. From a future that was already paved for him. Because after 4 years of rewriting lacrosse history, something inside him, something older than the accolades, older than the trophies, started pulling him back to the dream he had long before anyone called him a star. Basketball. And with 1 year of college eligibility left, Pat Specer didn't hesitate. He packed his bags, left the world he'd conquered behind, and headed to Northwestern for one last chance at the game he never truly let go. To the lacrosse world, this wasn't just unexpected, it was unthinkable. You don't walk away from being one of the greatest college players ever. You don't leave behind a legacy most athletes spend a lifetime chasing. Not for a sport you haven't played competitively since high school. Not for a dream that had flickered out long ago for almost everyone else. But Pat Specer wasn't everyone else. Years earlier, he had led his high school basketball team to its first state title in 25 years. He was a real player on the hardwood, long before lacrosse ever made him a star. But by college, lacrosse had consumed his path, and basketball felt like a chapter he never got the chance to finish. Now suddenly, that unfinished chapter was calling him back. This wasn't a pivot, it was a leap into the unknown. Lacrosse offered security. Pro contracts, international opportunities, endorsements, a guaranteed path to stardom. Basketball offered none of that. He would be a 23-year-old rookie with no recent tape, no recruiting profile, no promises. This wasn't a comeback. It was starting over. Completely. So why do it? Why leave a throne for a bench? Why trade greatness for uncertainty? Because deep down, Pat Specer still believed he could play basketball. Not just play it, excel at it. Every assist he threw in lacrosse felt like a no-look pass waiting to happen. Every read, every cut, every moment, he manipulated defenders. It all pointed back to the sport he'd loved first. He didn't walk away from lacrosse because he didn't love it. He walked away because he still loved something else more. Northwestern wasn't a victory lap, it was a test, a place where he had to rebuild everything. His jumper, his handle, his conditioning, his timing. He wasn't joining the Wildcats as a star. He was joining them as a question mark. Could a 23-year-old lacrosse legend become a Division I basketball player? Could his instincts translate? Could his body catch up? Could he survive 40 minutes of Big Ten basketball after 4 years away from the hardwood? Not even Pat knew the answer. But everything changed the moment he stepped into his workout with Northwestern. Chris Collins watched him move, watched him create space, watched him attack the rim with a blend of balance and force that didn't fit the profile of someone coming back to basketball. He impressed the coaching staff immediately. Not just with athleticism, but with competitiveness. He tore through the norm that players must specialize early. He proved he wasn't returning to basketball out of nostalgia. He was returning because he could still play. And the moment the season tipped off, the world saw what Collins saw that day. Pat Specer didn't just fit in. He belonged. He started 29 of 31 games, averaging 10.4 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists in the Big Ten, one of the toughest conferences in the country. For someone who hadn't played competitive basketball since high school, it wasn't just impressive, it was unheard of. His lacrosse vision, his creativity, his toughness, all of it translated to the hardwood in ways no one predicted. But then, just as his story was gaining momentum, everything stopped. COVID-19 canceled the end of his college career. Most athletes in his position might have walked away. Some might have returned to the sport where they held all the leverage, all the fame, all the certainty. But Pat Specer had never followed the traditional path. He wasn't done. Not with basketball. Not yet. Because the leap from lacrosse to Division I basketball was unbelievable. But the leap from Northwestern to professional basketball? That was something else entirely. When Pat Specer's lone season at Northwestern ended abruptly because of COVID, it felt like the story should have stopped there. A lacrosse legend returning to basketball after years away and thriving in the Big Ten, that alone was more than anyone expected. But Pat Specer wasn't interested in a feel-good chapter. He wanted a career. He had rediscovered his first love, and he wasn't ready to walk away again. Not after proving he could still perform. Not after averaging 10.4 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists while starting 29 games in one of the toughest conferences in college basketball. He had shown flashes of what he could be. Now came the test of what he actually was. He began the journey the hard way, the only way he'd ever known. After going undrafted in 2020, he signed with the Hamburg Towers in Germany to continue his basketball career. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't comfortable, but it was a start. After just 5 games overseas, another opportunity opened. On October 25th, 2021, he was signed by the Capital City Go-Go, the G League affiliate of the Washington Wizards. It was small, but it was the first real stepping stone to the NBA. In limited minutes, about 13 per game, he averaged 6 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists, while shooting 39% from 3, proving he could contribute efficiently even in a new system. It was enough. Enough to keep him on the radar. Enough for the next call. In July 2022, he signed an Exhibit 10 contract with the Santa Cruz Warriors, the G League affiliate of Golden State. A 1-year deal, a training camp invite, a long shot wrapped inside a longer shot. He played well enough to turn heads. But with only 15 roster spots and 2 two-way contracts available, the Warriors told him the truth. There wasn't a place for him, not yet. Most players would have taken the hint. Pat Specer doubled down. He stayed with Santa Cruz, grinding through the G League season, carving out a role, improving his game, until something he had rarely experienced in his athletic life hit him head-on. Injuries. 2 major ones, hip surgery and wrist surgery, knocked him out of action. Not minor aches, not something he could grit through. Actual surgeries, actual time away. For someone who had never felt truly sidelined, it was foreign territory. Painful. Humbling. Necessary. But when he returned in November 2023, it was as if the time away hadn't taken a thing from him. He came out attacking, averaging 12.5 points, 5.4 rebounds, and 3.8 assists, shooting 37.7% from three. Slightly above the NBA league average. He wasn't just back, he was better. And this time, people at the top were noticing. Steve Kerr saw it, Golden State saw it, the organization that values IQ, feel, movement, toughness. Everything Pat Specer had been building his entire life finally saw a fit. On February 22nd, 2024, he signed a two-way contract with the Golden State Warriors, a deal typically reserved for emerging young talents. And here was Pat, at 27 years old, earning one through sheer force of will. 3 days later, he stepped onto an NBA court, wearing one of the most unusual numbers in the league, 61. 6 and 1 is 7. I wore 7 during my lacrosse run, Specer explained. And then there's 60 spots in the NBA draft. 61 just signifies me making my own journey. 5 years after turning down a guaranteed superstar career in the Premier Lacrosse League, he made his NBA debut on February 25th, 2024, against the Denver Nuggets, a lacrosse icon standing on an NBA court, wearing a number that told his entire story. A story no one could have predicted, except maybe Pat himself. And his rise didn't stop there. On February 5th, 2025, he was trending again, this time for a SportsCenter top 10 dunk against the Utah Jazz, a moment that felt symbolic.
We're tied at 74, under 6 to play.
The lacrosse legend, who once questioned if he even belonged in Division I basketball, was now throwing down highlights in the NBA. Pat Specer had found his place. And the question was no longer whether he could carve out a career. The question was how far he could take this, long after dominating the lacrosse world, and long after proving that every obstacle in his path could be turned into fuel. Pat Specer didn't enter the NBA through the front door, or the side door, or even the back door. He climbed through a window nobody else even knew existed. And that's why his story resonates. Because in a league built on 5-star recruits, prodigies, and perfectly groomed prospects, Pat is something the NBA almost never sees anymore. A true underdog, not marketed, not manufactured. Real. Fans gravitate toward him because they see themselves in him. Not the superstar version, but the version who kept hearing no. He wasn't anointed, he wasn't hyped, he wasn't destined. He was cut from varsity, overlooked by college coaches, ignored by scouts, forced to start over again and again. And somehow, none of it broke him. People connect to that because they know what rejection feels like. They know what it's like to want something badly and be told they're too small, too late, or too far behind. Pat Specer is the reminder that believing in yourself can still matter in modern sports, even when the world doesn't. What makes him unique in today's NBA is that he's the opposite of the early specialization machine. He wasn't built in a single sport from age 8. He wasn't molded in elite academies. He developed across disciplines his lacrosse vision, his basketball creativity, his G League toughness, his European fundamentals. He sees the floor like a quarterback. He manipulates space like a point guard. He moves with the balance of a world-class attackman. And his mindset, it's unlike anything else in the league. Most players that grow up trying to get to the NBA. Pat had to fight just to stay in basketball. Then there's the improbability of it all, the statistical absurdity of his rise. A generational lacrosse talent deciding to switch sports, 4 years away from competitive basketball, yet returning to start in the Big Ten. A 27-year-old earning a two-way contract in a league obsessed with youth and upside. An athlete making his NBA debut against the defending champions after recovering from 2 major surgeries. You could simulate this journey 10,000 times, and maybe never recreate it. That's what makes it historic. This isn't just another underdog story. This is a sports anomaly. The rare athlete who reached elite status in 2 completely different sports. In lacrosse, he was a legend. In basketball, he became living proof that the multi-sport athlete of old could still thrive in today's hyper-specialized world. There are 2 sport athletes. There are stars who dabble in both. But a lacrosse GOAT signing an NBA contract? That's not a story, that's history. And as remarkable as it is, it's also a path that will almost never be repeated. His journey required a perfect storm. A late growth spurt, a multi-sport foundation, extraordinary work ethic, an adaptable mind, and the right coaches willing to take a chance. No blueprint can replicate it. No trainer can manufacture it. No system can produce it. Pat Specer is a one of one, which leads to the question everyone is asking now. What comes next? He's already done the impossible by making the NBA. Now comes the test that determines longevity. Carving out a real role, adapting again, evolving again, proving again that he belongs. If history tells us anything, it's this. Pat Specer never ends up where he's supposed to be. He ends up where he works to be. And as long as he keeps working, this story, one of the most improbable in modern sports, is still being written.